Hello, everyone. Having a baby is supposed to be one of the best times, but it can also be a very, very difficult time. As many as 1 in 5 women develop a mental health problem during pregnancy or in the first year after giving birth. Now, to mark Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week and its theme, The Power of Connection, we're joined by 2 women who have kindly agreed to share their own experiences and their stories of recovery. So please be aware that there will be some sensitive content in our discussions. I'm delighted to welcome Selena Hinchcliffe, who you'll no doubt know as a well-known sports broadcaster who made history by becoming the first woman to present BBC's Match of the Day. You'll be seeing her across your screens on Sky and ITV over the summer. She has 2 sons and suffered with postnatal anxiety after both births. Welcome to you, Selena.
Thank you.
And Annie Belasco is the head of Pounders Foundation, a charity that offers peer-to-peer support through a network of volunteers and a helpline. Annie used the service herself after suffering during her pregnancy and has since brought her business skills to expand the work of the charity. Welcome to you as well, Annie. Thank you both for joining us today. Perhaps, I guess, the best place to start really is, what is perinatal depression? Annie, you've been doing lots of research, obviously, with the foundation in this area. Perhaps you could kick us off by explaining what you would describe it as.
So when we talk about perinatal mental health or perinatal mental illness, we're considering the mental health of a parent from conception through to birth and beyond. And that's classified as perinatal mental health. It's not an overly kind of familiar term, but we're, with good awareness and knowledge, becoming more educated around it. And that can be, when we talk about perinatal mental illness, we can consider anything from low mood and anxiety right through to pre and postnatal depression, maternal OCD, and birth trauma.
Is it the same as baby blues?
So I strongly dislike the term baby blues. I have a bit, this is my personal opinion. We talk about baby blues, and it's a term that most people are very familiar with. And baby blues is considered to be symptoms that may arise around roughly after having a baby, around 2 weeks after, and they're associated with hormonal changes. So lots of women can experience low mood, anxiety, panic, and that is considered baby blues. The difference between baby blues and a perinatal mental illness, such as postnatal depression, is that keyword persistence. So if a mother is presenting with low mood and anxiety, and those feelings are persistent and increasing in intensity, in terms of dark thoughts, struggling to bond with their baby, which go on day after day, week after week, month after month, we would suggest that that person may be presenting with signs and symptoms of a perinatal mental illness, which would not be considered as baby blues.
Selena, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Baby blues feels way wide of the mark. I mean, I think every mother struggles, in the initial stages, but I think this is markedly different. As Annie said, there feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I think even the term blues, it can present, as Annie said, as anxiety, disconnect, OCD. It manifests in strange ways. I think when I was asked to describe how I felt, it was just like, something strange happens to me when I have a baby, but it doesn't lift. And yeah, baby blues is a bit of a euphemism, really, that isn't accurate.
And it's so good that we're having conversations like this now about these kinds of issues. Annie, your experience really started during pregnancy, and I know Selena's was post-birth, I think. So perhaps could you explain what sort of feelings you were experiencing at that stage?
Of course. So when I was pregnant with my first baby 8 years ago, I had really quite extreme prenatal depression and anxiety, and that was triggered by a condition called hyperemesis, which some people may be familiar with, which is persistent sickness. So I was literally being sick the second I knew I was pregnant, right through to giving birth. And because that was so physically debilitating, that it really triggered my mental health, and also because I'd gone through previous mental health illnesses in the past. This had the pregnancy had re-triggered my exploring how I was feeling back then. So anxiety was heightened. I felt in a very, very dark place. I did not enjoy pregnancy. I certainly didn't want a baby shower. I wasn't glowing, as everyone was telling me I was. And I was so lethargic and so depressed, and just felt myself in a complete hole. And I just wanted the pregnancy to be finished so that I could start enjoying being a mother. I did seek help at that point, because it really did get to the point where I couldn't leave the house. I was obsessing. I was convinced that something was going to go wrong, and it ruined my maternity experience.
Mm-hmm. Selena, there's a sort of feeling that sometimes, isn't there, that everybody else is, oh, it's wonderful, you're pregnant, how fantastic. And either before the birth or after the birth, you're sitting there and you just feel so lonely, because it's really hard to tell people that actually you're not having that experience that they think you're having.
Yes, I had a good pregnancy. I worked throughout it, and was very lucky. And then I had my baby, and after about 5 days, this strange feeling descended on me, and I would have the most awful, I wouldn't even call them panic attacks. I'd call them terror attacks, actually. I couldn't sleep. I was very lucky my son slept. He was quite an incredible baby in that respect, but I couldn't sleep. We're getting about 1 hour's sleep a night. I couldn't eat. I just felt this utter terror, constantly on edge, wired, disconnected, obsessing about feeding him. I mean, I felt like a complete personality bypass. Like in my normal life, I'm quite gregarious, fun-loving, social. I just became completely introverted, and I didn't know what was going on. It was absolutely terrifying, really. And I similarly didn't want to leave the house. The most simplest of tasks were just absolutely baffling, and just this overwhelming feeling of dread and terror and fear. And I couldn't say what it was. It was just like a nameless fear, a nameless dread each morning. It would get better in the evenings when my husband would come back. But yeah, it was sort of felt like it was completely out of the blue, but mystifying. I didn't know what it was.
And were you able to tell anybody what you were going through?
I think I'm really lucky in my personality type. I am a kind of seeker, if you like. If something's wrong, I do ask for help. This is why this subject is so passionate, because I'm so aware of those women that can't ask for help, and they're not as fortunate, in terms of I had a loving husband. But I did say, I was vocal, and I think that was a real saving grace for me. I think I was very lucky in the fact I did articulate. I mean, I couldn't say what it was, but I was being open about how I felt. Yeah, to my midwife, to my husband, to my family, my GP. I was begging for help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't think it was me. I didn't think it was, I didn't think it was that. I thought it was, I don't know what I thought it was.
That's the problem, I guess, Annie, isn't it? That you don't know what it is that you're going through. And it's wonderful, Selena, that you were able to talk so openly about what you were going through with people close to you. But there are so many women that potentially that's not possible, I guess, Annie.
Absolutely. And even though Selena was able to have that support network, that probably wouldn't have taken away any of those symptoms. It may have offered some comfort in those times, but it doesn't kind of help what she was going through. But it's great that Selena's able to talk about it. I think there's a huge lack of preparation for women and men from the beginning of a conception journey. So many parents plan to have a baby, and everything is very much focused around the practical arrangements. What are we going to have, a boy or a girl? What are we going to call the baby? What pram are we going to get? We go to antenatal classes. We prepare for, I suppose, the different birth plans that we could have. And again, that plan word isn't very helpful, because life is what happens when we make plans. And lots of women do plan to have a water birth with no medication and end up having a C-section. And that can be very traumatizing. So I think that from day dot, from planning a pregnancy, there needs to be so much more awareness in equal alignment to the physical awareness of what we're about to go through. Because if we can't mentally prepare and have an awareness around perinatal mental illness, for example, pre and postnatal depression, when it does hit, like Selina says, it comes out of the blue, it's a shock, it's terrifying. And with some parents, there's kind of a sense of judgment. Can I say that I'm really not enjoying parenthood and that I'm dreading each morning, just hoping that I'll get through the day for fear of being judged, or that, you know, the dreadful kind of rumor around your baby will be taken away, which in most cases is clearly not the case. So I think that whilst we don't want to scare parents into saying, well, this could happen and that could happen, I think awareness and preparation is so important, because we're able to do it from a practical sense. It's so important that if we then are experiencing any signs and symptoms, or our partner is, we can be all over it straight away to get that help as soon as possible without feeling shame, because there is a diagnosis for it and recovery is completely possible.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back, you know, the questions that you get asked, you know, your health visitor, or you fill out a form, don't you? You know, are you experiencing any mental health issues? I don't know what the question is these days, but it's not the sort of thing that you're going to admit to, is it, very easily? Because you just feel completely guilty that you're not feeling like every expectant mum, or, you know, mum who's just given birth, you know, happy and elated and all the rest of it.
I think Annie's right. There's huge shame. I think I didn't even always tell the truth. I think I had a huge fear, you know, my baby's going to be taken away from me. That was such a real fear. And so I think so many mums stay silent. And also my midwife, I was really lucky. I was able to breastfeed. I mean, it was hard work, but the latch, I was lucky he could latch on. But so the baby just kept gaining weight. You know, he was such a gorgeous baby. He's such a gorgeous boy. He was really happy. He slept. He was like this sort of textbook baby. So all the while he was gaining weight, they just, you know, they weren't as interested. And it was like, what about me? It was just this obsession with the baby. And I think there needs to be changes about. There are a lot of amazing midwives out there. But I remember that one of the midwives saying to me, well, everything's, you know, right with the baby. You're, you know, what's wrong with you? It was like, you know, you're the problem in a way. And I think there's just such shame. I felt that it was my fault, and it took to get proper help that this is not my fault. This is an illness. This is a chemical imbalance. I'd had a very 40-hour labor. You know, this is something that happens and I can't control it. It's not my fault. But I think so many women stay silent because of that shame, you know. If I'd slipped a disc in my back and I could feed him, I'd have had all sorts of people coming in and trying to help me, but I'd slipped a disc in my mind, and yet, you know, the help doesn't kick in.
So where did you go for help in the end, Selina? How did you get help?
Well, my husband was a real advocate for me, and one of the midwives, I sort of just begged her. I said, I know it looks as if everything's all right, but it really isn't. So I got a referral to the perinatal mental health team at my local hospital where I had him. And it's a complete postcode lottery because there isn't the help that we need out there. But the hospital where I had him had an amazing perinatal mental health team. So I had to wait about 4 or 5 weeks, which was like just agony. But that's probably a very quick referral. And then I had my first meeting where I just felt heard for the first time. I felt understood. All these, what I thought were horrific feelings, were listened to and accepted. And I was told that it wasn't unusual. There were lots of women that felt like I did. And yeah, so I was really one of the lucky ones. But I suppose I did shout quite loud. I did keep asking for help, my GP, but I was lucky that my hospital had that provision. It's very rare.
And just staying with you just briefly there, Selena, so that what was the practical help that you got that helped you through it all?
Yeah, I had psychotherapy sessions with a specialist perinatal psychotherapist. She was also a psychiatrist as well. She was like dual role. And we talked about my feelings, my connection with my son. I used to take him to the sessions. Sometimes if I was really bad, it might be twice a week. I got home visits. I took medication. I made a decision to take antidepressants. I don't know if that was right or wrong. I always wonder, but I feel for me, I was just like, whatever help there is, just ship it in. I don't want to feel like this. And so slowly I was a sort of shattered individual, and slowly, piece by piece, I felt like I built myself back up with the help of the relationship with that psychotherapist. It was me, my son, and her in that room, and I can't even tell you how it works. It just she helped me to focus on my relationship with him and notice things about him, notice the way he moved, just this connection. Forget about everybody else, forget about my friends, forget about my family, judgment, what will they think, and just focus on this relationship with him. And it was this magical process, really. I grasped it. I was very willing and open. And although my recovery was never linear, I wanted it to go like this. It was like this. My husband used to draw me graphs, but eventually, I got there. So that was my story, really.
Yeah. And Annie, is Selena one of the lucky ones? Is that a regular experience for women today, or the research that you've been doing recently, does it show that that is, it's a lovely, place that Selena was able to get that help and trust the person that is trying to help her? Is that the experience for a lot of women, or is that unusual?
I love that Selena's husband was drawing graphs. I mean, you can't get more committed or more loving or more determined than that. And I think that is the pinnacle network. Things like that, really huge. I've never heard that, and it just makes such a difference. That's beautiful. Selena did a really amazing job in acknowledging her feelings, but asking for them to be validated, so that she wasn't left in a place of feeling like she'd been let go of after she'd had her baby. And from a textbook point of view, that would be the journey that Selena went on. And I know you commented saying that was a quick referral, and it didn't feel like it was. It would have felt interminable. The NICE guidelines are that the therapy should begin within 6 weeks, so that would be an acceptable time frame. However, we, our Pandas Foundation, have recently surveyed over 1,000 women, 1,500 women actually, and men. A much smaller percentage of men contributed to this, to talk about their experiences in terms of asking for support and how that's played out. And a huge amount of people said that they just weren't seen in an acceptable time frame, and 3/4 of those said that whilst they were waiting, their symptoms worsened. So whilst we have huge respect and empathy for the NHS, it's obvious that, partly because of the pandemic and partly because of the mental health crisis anyway in society, because of everything that's going on top of the normal strains and stresses of everyday life, becoming a parent is stressful, it's relentless. So we're finding that the parents that are coming to us are having to wait, and when they do get that treatment, it does work, but what they're saying to us is that it's not quick enough, it's not enough. And the danger with that is, from our charity perspective, is that in terms of mental illness, if it's detected and the parent or carer is able to communicate that quickly and acknowledge what's going on, being able to communicate and articulate that to a health professional, there is every chance, recovery is completely possible. But if they're having to wait and wait and wait, there is a real big risk that it can develop into something more sinister. And that's why we discourage people from using the term around baby blues, because it can often kind of downplay something much more sinister going on. So in answer to your question, that sounds like a fantastic arm of support and pathway for Celina's recovery. And it just, yeah, I think many of our parents would do so well from that treatment. But unfortunately, what we're hearing is that they're having to wait and wait and wait. But that is where our foundation can come in to help those women and men who may be experiencing early symptoms.
So what support is out there from your foundation, Annie? How can people get in touch if they're either worried about themselves and feel like they are experiencing these symptoms and having this experience, or a partner or a friend who might be worried about somebody? What's the best thing for them to do?
So we are free, we have no waiting list, and you don't have to have a diagnosis to contact us. So we support every parent, care or network which may be struggling with their mental health from conception through to birth and beyond. The best way of accessing our support services are via our website, which is pandasfoundation.org.uk. We have face-to-face group support, our free helpline, our email service, our closed community groups, and also our recently rolled out tech service. And we also have our social media channels where we are very strategic in what we publish. We don't believe in the arts comparison. We post empowering stories and supportive, collaborative pieces to show the journey of recovery and what support is available. And our support is overseen by our management team and safeguarding managers, but also run by amazing volunteers who have lived work and academic experience, who all have had some insight into perinatal mental illness. Many of our teams also have other jobs working for the NHS. So we really feel that with our empathy and our understanding, we're best placed to support the needs of every parent at an early stage.
And if somebody does come to you for help, is it one-on-one help, or can they actually speak to somebody sort of physically face-to-face, or is it all online? How does that work?
So we don't offer free counselling, but what we do offer is that one-to-one support. So from an email perspective, there will be one volunteer assigned to that parent. From a helpline perspective, there will be one volunteer assigned to that parent. We're very keen on making sure there are boundaries on both sides so that there isn't an attachment formed, because we don't feel that's helpful for the parent's recovery, but we do make sure that our support is consistent. We don't offer face-to-face one-to-one support, but what we do offer are our group support, where we offer a safe community within local communities, which is facilitated by Pandas teams, where of course there'll be the opportunity for parents to ask any questions that they have or any worries and concerns.
And Selina, I think from the chat that we're having this morning, it's just so important to be able to talk to somebody, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I was put in touch with a mother who had recovered, and to hear lived experience and the message that, you will get through this will pass, it is temporary, was just something that I held on to, just like a sort of mantra. And I think I found it difficult to be around any other mothers at that time because I felt so different. But just taking baby steps, being encouraged to, getting out, like having a shower, having a cup of coffee, like changing my baby, like these are tiny, massive achievements, and celebrating such small baby steps, and the others will notice you recovering before you do. And Annie said it earlier, not comparing yourself. This phrase, compare and despair, I luckily had my babies before social media had sort of really exploded. But, I can't imagine how that must have been. And just keeping a very small circle around me of people that I could be honest with, that I knew cared about me, and sort of basically shrinking my life a lot, which happens naturally, of course, when you have a baby, but much more so, when I was going through something like this. And I just want to say other things like, sleep is the pillar, and that's so difficult. And particularly mothers on their own who are struggling, just finding a network of friends. One time I had to get a friend to come and stay over and help. And, that is very difficult, just the burden of things that are going on at that time, being obsessed with in the end, I bottle fed, thinking, oh my gosh, the judgment of bottle feeding. And In fact, I say this thing to other mothers, you know, when my sons get married, whether they were in a church or registry office or wherever they are, you know, do you think the whole congregation is going to be like, can we just stop the service? Actually, was he breastfed? Was he bottle fed? Like, it's just not going to happen. Yet at the time when a mother is so ill, something like that can just become such an obsession. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you. And there is that, it's that perfect mum syndrome, isn't it? And the perfect birth and all the rest of it. And very few people have that. In fact, I don't even think I know anybody who's had that. Annie, just sort of rolling back then. So, you know, for instance, if there are people who've joined the conversation today who maybe are worried about a partner, or just maybe want information to be prepared if you know, if they're expecting a child. Are there any sort of symptoms, any signs that you can look out for, either with a friend or a partner, where you know, which would be a bit of a red flag to say, actually, I think, you know, maybe I'll have a chat with them and, you know, encourage them to maybe talk to me or ask for a bit of help?
I think for networks, so partners and friends, the key communication skill is to listen. And, you know, there's no such thing as an awkward silence. It's always a person processing what they're thinking. And I think it's about observation and understanding, and not trying to force a parent to talk how they feel, because a lot of the time we've just had a baby, we don't know how we feel because we're obsessing about how that baby is feeling. We kind of go into that animal instinct of protection. But to answer your question, I think it's really around knowing that person, and you will have a gut feeling. You will know from what they're saying. You will know from their reactions. Are the feelings of low mood and anxiety rational? Are they disappearing? Are they keeping it in? We refer to it like as a sink. So when we give some advice, the plug should go in. Sometimes the plug comes out and then the advice just goes through. And we need parents to be able to feel strong enough to keep that positive empowerment and self-belief. Because so many parents feel so worthless after having a baby. Their names are normally replaced with mum or dad. And I just genuinely think it's around networks, being really observant, listening to the parents around what they're saying, and also not telling them what to do. So discussing different options. Would it be helpful to talk to someone? No. Okay. Would it be helpful to email someone? That could be, you know, and they're all the different services that we have. But it's also important to mention that if that person is, for example, having thoughts of self-harm or risk of harming themselves or someone else, it's so important that they seek urgent medical attention. And it's completely okay for the network of a parent who's worried about them to have that conversation with them and the NHS, etc., if they need to. But it's about offering that support and encouragement and belief.
I also think sleep is an indicator. Not being able to sleep, early morning waking, I know there's always an element of that with a new baby, of like, oh, is he breathing? And of course, but I think from the women I've spoken to, a number of them, that even when the baby was sleeping, that the sleep went out the window, and that was very much linked. I think that's something to look out for. And obsessive compulsive thinking, I think. Again, it's hard because these are all natural feelings initially around a baby, but more extreme versions of that. Yeah.
And if you both had some advice that you would like to pass on from the conversation that we're having today, Selina, what would your message be to women?
I would not, and I was guilty of this, asking everyone for help in a way. I would keep the circle small of trusted people, whether that's someone you're chatting to at Pandas, a partner. If you don't have a partner, I think it's really important to get someone else to be an advocate for you, to take to your GP, just take a friend who is an advocate for you, because when you're in that room, your voice can go and you freeze. You need someone else to be an advocate. I talked about compare and despair. I think just real baby steps. Recovery is it is slow. and it's incremental, and patience, which is really difficult. Patience with recovery. There will be good days and there will be bad days. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 3 steps back, and knowing that you are not alone. Millions and billions of women across this planet have been through or are going through what you are going through. You are not alone. It's not your fault, and you can't control this illness. You can just listen to good advice and put in, the basics. Sometimes I just go for a walk, get outside if you can. Sometimes you don't want to be outside, but I felt like a walk always helped. Also, eating first thing in the morning was big for me. I used to have a bowl of oats by my bed, because when I woke up, the dread was so powerful that making sure I ate whatever it was, even it had to be soup, whatever, but food is really important.
Yeah. Annie, what about you? What's the message that you would like to kind of pass on through this?
So very much similar to Selena, the social media aspect can be a great tool, but it can also be a nightmare. I think that it's okay to unfollow people and organisations and accounts that aren't helpful, even if they're popular. I think it can be really detrimental on a person's mental health to constantly be watching this dream that may be reality or not for that person, and to put a ring around themselves and have boundaries. It's okay to say no to visitors. It's okay to say no for people to come in and take selfies with the baby, and allow you to have time to bond with your baby. But I ultimately think that anyone that is feeling sad or feeling low, or their expectations haven't been met, that they visualize becoming a parent or being out or about to be a parent, they should acknowledge those feelings and know that they're okay to feel like that. But we also don't want them to feel okay like that. So asking for help and acknowledging how you're feeling is absolutely the bravest thing, but the first step of recovery. And once you've got over that line of being able to say, there's something not right, I don't feel well, it's scary, but it's incredibly empowering because you're one step ahead.
And I guess the main thing from both of you is that recovery is possible.
For sure.
Totally.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. There is, that there are wonderful things on the other side, but it's very hard. I had this phrase, I didn't have much hope, and so I remember my mum saying to me, let others hold the hope for you. And sometimes you need that, whether it's a good friend, a girlfriend, a partner, a parent, if you've still got your parents, sometimes let other people hold the hope for you, because it's very hard to have the hope at the time.
Thank you both for being so honest and sharing your experiences and advice today. We really, really appreciate it. And I hope it's helped people who've been tuning in to listen to the conversation today. I really hope that everybody who's been listening in has found this discussion useful and informative. And, many of you will be considering your own or a partner's or a friend's mental health as a parent or an expecting parent. So we've put lots of resources and signposts to pandas and other organisations that offer support on our client wellbeing platforms, and also on our free public platform, Champion Cinema. If you just search for maternal mental health or perinatal depression, they'll pop up, and we'll also obviously include them in our follow-up email with a link to this recording. Just to remind you about what Frog Systems does, we're a mental health and wellbeing platform provider, and you can find out more about what we do on our website, which is frogsystems.co.uk. Please do sign up for our newsletter, and you can follow us on social media for our regular updates and to keep up to date with the live stream discussions that we'll be having in the future. Thanks, Selena. Thank you, Annie, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in. Do have a good rest of the day and take care of yourself.